I am starting live streaming on YouTube right now.
Yes, it is.
It is 1 p.m. We're just awaiting a chair or vice chair to join before we commence the meeting.
Recording in progress.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Joe.
All right, Laura, you'll let me know when we can start?
We do have a quorum, Chair, so you may begin whenever you are ready.
All right. Well, with that and having permission to begin, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alfredo Pedroza, Chair of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. Thank you all for joining us. If we can please do roll call.
May I run the preamble first?
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely. One moment.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provision of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on the NVTA website. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available at a later time on the NVTA website. The Chair will call upon board members, presenters, staff, and other speakers by name, ask that they speak clearly, and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers and may be part of the Zoom recording. Board members and members of the public participating by Zoom who wish to speak should
I'm sorry, there was a glitch. Let's see if I can resume that for you.
Thank you very much, Laura.
use the raise hand feature or *9 on their phone. Teleconference attendees will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Phone participants must unmute themselves by pressing *6. It is requested that public speakers state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received at info@nvta.ca.gov after 5 p.m. yesterday will be entered into the record but not read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand. The chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Panelists should note that the chat feature is active. However, please be aware that anything typed in the chat will be subject to public disclosure. The chat feature is not active to attendees. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date.
Thank you very much, Laura, for that. If Councilmember Joseph can lead us in the pledge, please.
Be happy to. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, let's move on to roll call.
Leon Garcia, Mark Joseph,
Here.
Chris Canning,
Here.
Gary Kraus has been noted as absent. Liz Alessio,
Present.
alternate today for Director Sedgley, Beth Painter,
Here.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Here.
Belia Ramos,
Here.
Paul Doring,
Here.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Here.
John Dunbar,
Here.
Carrie Dorman,
Here.
Doug Weir.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and welcome Councilmember Painter today. All right, let's move on for adoption of the agenda. Is there any member that wishes to make any changes to the agenda? I'm not seeing any hands raised from my vantage point. Laura, do we have any public comment on the adoption of the agenda?
We do not.
All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion for item 4, adoption of the agenda as presented.
So moved, Joseph.
All right, we have first by Councilmember Joseph.
Second, Dorman.
Thank you by Councilmember Dorman. Roll call vote, please.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Beth Painter,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura. We're going to move on to public comment. This is a time when any member of the public can address the board on any item that's not on today's agenda. Laura, I'll turn to you to see if we have any members of the public that wish to comment.
I do not have any, no.
All right. Thank you for that. So we're going to move on. Seeing no further public no public comment, we're going to move on to item 6, chairpersons, board members, MTC update, ABAG update. I'll start with our representatives from ABAG, Mary Garcia or Supervisor Ramos. Do you have a report?
Nothing to add at this time. We have a meeting tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Ramos. So we'll move on to MTC update. Quite a bit happening at MTC. Many of you are now familiar with the Blue Ribbon Task Force that has been convened, which we are part of, that was looking at the recovery of ridership in the Bay Area, especially looking at our systems through the lens of those transit-dependent riders. We were also working closely with Assemblymember Chu on SB 629 that was really looking at the principles of wayfindings, mapping, branding, bus transit priority, and the network management. And the network management was really one of those issues that was going to look at how do we have better coordination among the operators in the region for the benefit of the rider, increasing ridership. AB 629 did not advance, and I think that's actually an opportunity for us to delineate issues that we can focus on now. And as chair of MTC, what we're going to be advancing and what a priority is wayfindings, consistent branding so the rider knows, fair integration where there's dependable, predictable, standardized fares for the benefit of the riders, and also bus priority. And the other one that we've added is looking at communities where there's a potential to merge, consolidate, collaborate among operators. We should be encouraging that. This is not taking away local control, but where there is an interest in counties to see operators come together, we should be incentivizing those type of outcomes at MTC. The network management is going to take a different focus in terms of how the region talks about it, and it really is going to come down to the authority that this new body, this new committee may have. And again, we want to make sure that this is not at the cost of operators being successful, but at the benefit of having a system that's competitive, reliable for the benefit of the users. So that's what's been happening at the Blue Ribbon Task Force. We've been meeting with large operators, and I believe here soon, Vice Chair Lesio, myself, and our Executive Director, Kate Miller, are going to be meeting with the Blue Ribbon Task Force and the small operators. Again, continuing to hear from some of those smaller operators. Also on MTC, the principles of CRISA, which is programming $34.4 million of the federal funding that came down, and also the America Rescue Plan. I think between all the federal stimulus, it's close to over $2 billion, I believe, that's been invested in the region. But we need to do that thoughtfully, strategically. We had a workshop where all the operators presented, including our very own Kate Miller, presented in terms of the assumptions operators are making and ensuring that as we deploy these new round of funding, that it's done in a way that just doesn't go to reserves, but it's going to ensure that we get ridership and service standards back up. Lastly, many of you know we've been working on some pretty innovative projects with the Napa Valley Forward program, and we've also been working with some possibilities of doing roundabouts at Highway 29 and Rutherford Road, and then Highway 29 and Oakville Crossroad. And we were successful. One more hurdle to clear, but Program and Allocation Committee did allocate $6 million for this, and that's a huge opportunity for us locally to not only improve the safety of these intersections, but also the traffic conditions of those intersections. So again, some of the things we've been doing to bring more resources back to our community. At this point, I'll see if there's any questions for any of the things we covered at MTC. Nor again, I'll just ask for your assistance if any directors have any questions. Seeing
I don't
none?
see any on my end.
Wonderful. All right, we'll keep working to try to get more resources for our community. All right, let's move on to director's update. Director Miller, Kate Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see, where did my document go? There we go. So good afternoon. I wanted to give you just a brief update on where we are in terms of COVID and social distancing and masking. NVTA staff is back in the office as of yesterday, and masks are still being worn in the planning offices until the governor's executive order takes effect. And that will be tomorrow. That allows vaccinated office workers to go mask-free. I should note that the Transportation Security Administration's mask requirements that apply to all transportation with federal oversight, including public transportation facilities, will not expire until September 13th. Therefore, all staff and visitors must wear masks while out and about on Vine facilities, and that includes the grounds of the transit center. The governor's executive order that allowed public agencies to hold remote meetings during the pandemic will expire at the end of September. NVTA will hold an in-person board, will be holding in-person and board committee meetings beginning the month of October. We intend to provide options to members of the public to participate using an online platform. The Brown Act requires that board and committee members, however, attend in person. And if you plan to attend remotely, you must post notices at the location where you are and provide access to members of the public. NVTA staff recognizes that many things are likely to change, and we will continue to update board members and members of the public as these rules change. Some staffing changes. I'd like to welcome our new staff member, Farhad Farazmand. Farhad was hired to oversee construction management activities on the Calistoga St. Helena Vine Trail project, the Imola Park and Ride project, and the Vine maintenance facility. Farhad most recently worked at Caltrans and since 1994 until his retirement in 2020. Farhad's Caltrans career includes highway improvements, seismic retrofits, storm and fire damage repairs. He's worked on a number of notable projects, including the seismic retrofit of the US 101 I-80 connector in San Francisco. Most recently, he was responsible for overseeing the delivery of the $800 million widening on US 101 in Marin and Sonoma counties, as well as maintenance and other transportation projects in Marin County. As part of these efforts, Farhad was awarded the Excellence in Partnering Gold Award and Silver Award. Farhad earned his A-levels at the Stratford College in Manchester, England, in mathematics and physics. From there, Farhad attended the United States International University in San Diego, where he earned his Bachelor of Science in Engineering. Unfortunately, Farhad was not able to join us today, but nevertheless, we welcome him to the NVTA team. I think Director Pedroza mentioned that staff presented to the Programming and Allocations Committee. I was invited to present along with the large Bay Area transit operators and 3 other small operators. And the presentations were intended to be an opportunity for operators to share with commissioners some of the fiscal and operating challenges relating to the pandemic and provide an overview of how systems are building back, insight on how systems are achieving improved coordination and efficiencies in a post-pandemic world. I think the Vine was a standout on some of the service changes that were made at the beginning of the pandemic, which is to put the system in the city of Napa on demand, as well as how that has provided some adaptability as we restore service hours. Rebecca will be sharing with you today some proposals for your feedback on additional fixed route service options and expanded service hours. We're making some headway on our financing of the maintenance facility. We anticipate that staff will be presenting a final Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, otherwise known as TIFIA, term sheet for the board's approval at its July meeting. Once that has been approved, there will be a couple of months for the Build America Bureau to finalize the loan. One of the requirements that must be met before the BAB approves the loan is that a public hearing must be held within the county where the facility is located, but not at the agency's office. The Board of Supervisors agreed to hold the public hearing at its June 22nd meeting. Staff will be in attendance to present and to respond to any questions. I'm also pleased to announce we have met a number of milestones, including approval of the Local Transportation Fund Redirection Agreement by MTC to automatically redirect Transportation Development Act funds to ensure the annual debt payment is made. I would like to acknowledge Tony and Roxana for moving this very complicated process along. Thank you very much. Finally, but by no means the least important announcement of the day, I am happy to announce that the NVTA family welcomes a second COVID baby, Christy Frances Payan, who arrived on June 9th at 12:36 a.m. Congratulations to the proud parents, Libby and Robert Payan. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Miller. A lot of great news. And I may from time to time call you Director McMillan just because I happen to chair MTC and NVTA. So I have to get those M's straight. But thank you, Kate, for your good report. Any questions of Kate's update? All right, Laura, seeing none, we're going to move on to Caltrans update. Do we have Kelly on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon,
right.
Chair and board member. Kelly Hirschberg, Regional Project Manager with the Caltrans reporting. We do have a quick presentation by Daniel, so I'll keep my report brief. So, the monthly report that we provide to you all, there's about the 40 projects listed that goes from project initiation through the construction phase. So just wanted to highlight a couple of the significant projects. So the projects in the PIT, there are 4 that were slated to complete within this fiscal year. One is the pavement rehab projects in the through American Canyon and 29. And there are a couple of the storm damage projects in 121 and 128, and also the safety projects in various locations. So these most likely will get the compete for programming with the CTC. So, this will be materialized probably next March or May timeframe for the programming. So the remaining projects, the environmental phase, there are 2 that we're looking into completing the environmental phase in the next 2 months. And within the design, there's 3 projects we're trying to RTL, meaning it's ready to list. So we could go out to the construction in the next 6 months or so. So one is a curb band project along 29, predominantly in American Canyon. And we also have a cap band project on 29 from St. Helena to the Calistoga at the 128 junction. And we also do have at this moment, I cannot think of a third project that we're trying to finish it up. And with that, the projects in the construction, there's 8 that is listed. Last month, we came and talked to you about the project that is going into construction phase, which is a 121 at Capel Creek. So today, we'd like to actually talk to you about or present to you the Huchika Creek, which is on 121 Canaris Road. And the construction is going through the award process, and it should be due to start anytime soon. So real quickly, Daniel Chang is a project manager in our group. He got promoted in February of this year. So a lot of the project that he inherited is from used to carry on by Ahmad. So Daniel has over 13 years of experience with the Caltrans, and his experience spans from what we call rotation and a lot in the construction as well as the project management and risk management offices. So I'm really lucky to have him in within my group and serve the NVTA. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and he could go ahead and say a few words and start the presentation. So that's pretty much completes my report.
Hello, this is Daniel Chang with Caltrans Project Management. I'm going to share the PowerPoint.
Go ahead.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So basically, this job is Huchika Creek. The location is on Route 121 between post mile 0.05 and 1.0. So on your left is the Google map without the satellite. And then on the right is the actual Google map with the satellite image. This is the bridge that we're replacing. This is a site condition, current site condition that we went to the field back in March of this year. So this is the triple culvert that we're replacing on the right-hand side. And this is on the road street level. The purpose of this job is to continue the safety job that was started under the contract 444214, which is to provide full shoulder for the corridor. As part of this job, the scope is to replace the triple culvert and replace it with the free span bridge, improve the fish passage in the Huchika Creek, and restore 450 feet of the creek bank. So this is stage one. The project is about to start within the next few weeks. The contract was actually approved June 10th. And so stage one work consists of constructing the south side of the bridge. And so what that means, improvements into temporary construction for the driveway, temporary construction for the roadway, and shoring of the bridge over here. In the purple, that is the TCE. That's where construction activity would allow the contractor to go in. And then the fish passage is in the blue area. And we have the green area as the ESA. Those are off limits to the contractor. Traffic would be routed on the north side. And then stage two. This would occur probably at the beginning of spring to summer of 2022. This is where we flip the project and we actually work on the north side, as you see in the red. We would continue the fish passage, and at the end of the stage, you would actually place the HMA minus the last lift. Traffic would be detoured on the south side, so we don't expect a full closure or even a one lane. This project accommodates both traffic. And then at the end of summer 22, this is stage three. This is the demo portion of the temporary structure that we had on the south side, and also the roadway improvement that we did in the beginning of the job. We would also continue to finish off the improvements of fish passage, and traffic would be restored to normal, what it was before the job started. This is our schedule. So far, we're on schedule for the job. We're right here by contract award. In fact, I believe probably the last week of June, construction might start. This traffic would be open by fall of 2022 if everything stays on schedule. This is what the current site looks like, and this is what is planned after construction. This is from our visual simulation during the PAD stage. Thank you. That's all I have.
Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, David and Kelly. Any questions for the Caltrans representatives? I do see Mayor Ellsworth. Mayor Ellsworth, go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't get my hand up in time after Kelly's presentation. I just had a question on the Pope Street issue that you went over. So you're looking at a time frame that would begin, that window sort of opens up in March of next year. Is there any more info on that?
Well, so I think that's the project that you're looking at in the project initiation phase. We unfortunately were not able to finish the PID, this shop cycle. So we'll be continuing to work on it and look for the programming opportunity for the next shop cycle. So I think that there is still an opportunity for us to work with you closely, but it will not follow the March timeframe that I spelled it out earlier.
Okay, well, we'll circle in with our city manager and public works and make sure we're having a dialogue with you in terms of where things will slot. So thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Do we have any other board members that wish to comment on the update? Seeing none, Laura, do we have any members of the public that might have questions for Caltrans?
We do not.
All right, thank you very much, Kelly and David. Appreciate the presentation. We're going to move on to our next item, which is item 9, presentations. First up is the Napa County Safe Routes to School Public Opinion Research Findings and Next Steps. This is an informational item, but I do believe Patrick Bain has joined us today, or will be joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Pedroza. I'm Diana Meehan with NVTA, planner here with NVTA. The Safe Routes to School program, as you may know, is cooperated in partnership by the Napa County Office of Education and the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, and with support by NVTA. The current program is a 3-year program, fiscal year 2019 through 2021. It was funded under OBAG Cycle 2 and a grant through the Active Transportation Program. We have recently requested a 1-year extension to cover the time period through 2022 due to some delays under the COVID pandemic. To continue the program for an additional year, NVTA has secured funding through the MTC Safe and Seamless Quick Strike Mobility Program. As you may know, national data does show that Safe Routes to School programs are very effective in improving safety, have air quality benefits and congestion, and also multiple health improvements. I'd like to introduce Patrick Band, who is here from the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, part of the Safe Routes to School program team, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the details of some research done under the current program. Patrick.
Thank you, Diana. Again, just to recap, the Bicycle Coalition partners with the County Office of Education and NVTA to run the current Safe Routes to Schools program. The Office of Education primarily leads the classroom education and encouragement components, while for the last 3 years, the Bicycle Coalition has conducted Safe Routes to School walk audits at 36 public schools throughout Napa County, identifying over 600 barriers to safe walking and biking for kids. The outcome of that process will later this year be a walk audit report for every single public school in the county, identifying those barriers and possible solutions to those safety or access problems that are keeping kids from being able to safely walk and bike to school. Those reports will help guide future bike pedestrian plans, as well as funding decisions by local agencies, whether that's cities or school districts. Today, we're really focusing on the second component of the work that we've been doing, which is parent perception research. We've been pleased to work with EMC Research. We've got Sarah Labatt on the phone today, as well as Kevin White, to talk about the work that they've done. So just a bit of context, having the walk audit process, identifying those physical safety barriers or programmatic barriers is really important to understand the kind of full context. But this research component helps us to understand what are parents thinking when they're making that decision to let their kids walk or bike to school or not. It helps us establish a baseline for current walking and biking countywide by students, and helps us craft more effective programs down the road so that we're really targeting the limited dollars that we have for such programs into whether it's infrastructure or programs that are most effective. And just briefly why that matters to NVTA, to this body, as a transportation authority, obviously issues around congestion and related environmental impacts, GHG emissions are vitally important. In Napa County, we have about 20,000 kids who go to public schools pre-post-pandemic on a daily basis. So twice a day, 5 days a week, that adds up to be about 150,000 vehicle trips based on the data we have today, or roughly 5 million trips annually just to get kids to and from school.
I thought you had lunch with John.
Even a small shift in how kids are getting around, whether it's from vehicle to walking or pedestrian, can have significant benefits to congestion in our local cities and towns, as well as to those ancillary impacts, GHG emissions, as well as public health and kids' ability to be focused and energized as they're sitting down for the day in school. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Labatt. She's got a brief presentation to walk us through, and then we'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Great. Thanks so much, Patrick. I'm Sarah Labatt from EMC Research. We're an opinion research firm, national, but locally, we're right here in the Bay Area. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you all can see it. Give me a thumbs up. Yes, okay, I see nods, great. So I do have just a few slides and then happy to take questions when we conclude. So a quick overview of the research that we did. The purpose of the research, as Patrick discussed, and this is research all with parents in Napa County, was really to gain insight into practices, perceptions, and attitudes around their children walking and riding bicycles to and from school, as well as explore some of the perceived barriers to behavior change and really what they're interested in. So there's a mix of quantitative and qualitative research that we did, a quantitative survey with 459 parents of K through 8 students in the county. That was done in basically mid-March to mid-April. And then following that, we did some qualitative follow-up research with parents who agreed to be contacted for follow-up research. And that's more of a discussion style research. We had 11 participants in that research, one group in English plus 4 in-depth telephone interviews in Spanish. Both of the pieces of research were offered in both English and Spanish. That wrapped up at the end of May. And we focused that qualitative discussion where we can really get a deeper dive on sort of what their perceptions are on parents who lived within a couple of miles of their children's school site and expressed an interest in their child walking and biking to school more than they were presently. So we really targeted that qualitative research. So as I walk through these slides, you'll see charts. Those come from the quantitative research, and then we sprinkled in some quotes from the qualitative that were very much consistent with what we heard in the quantitative as well. So big picture of what we learned from this research. First of all, about a quarter of parents surveyed said that their child primarily uses some active mode to get to school, whether that's walking, biking, scooter riding, et cetera. But nearly all parents said they would like their child to be able to walk or bike. We see very significant safety concerns among parents for children getting to school on their own, in particular because of their perceptions about distracted or inattentive drivers along the route. So a lot of concerns, this came up a lot in the qualitative too, about the driver behaviors. Improvements that would demand increased focus from those drivers were sort of the most resonant. So anything that could be done to increase the focus of those drivers or require them to pay more attention was something the parents felt would be beneficial. And then thinking more about the infrastructure, physical improvements, they leaned towards or gravitated towards ones that would allow bikes and pedestrians essentially to not interface with cars. So removing bikes and pedestrians from roadways and giving them dedicated spaces. So just a few slides here to sort of show some of that. As I said, about a quarter of parents have children that use some active mode to and or from school. And we asked them specifically about their K through 8 children. So about a quarter said that they use an active mode. And we did sort of explicitly focus them to thinking about when they were going to school, recognizing this pandemic environment that we have been in for much of the school year. We saw in that same question that distance is a significant factor, a correlation with their mode choice. So people who say they live within a mile of a school site, much more likely to have children using active transportation. About half said that their children use active transportation. As you kind of increase that distance, you see a huge drop off in the number of children using active transportation to get to school. Most parents would like their children to be able to walk or bike. 93% agree walking or biking to and from school is a good way for my child to get physical exercise. 88% agree I would like my child to be able to walk or bike to school. And 88% said my child enjoys walking and biking places. So very consistent too with what we heard in the focus groups. We have some quotes here at the bottom. And Patrick talked about this a little bit too, that the parents really talked about not just the exercise component that was part of it, but just engaging their brains, getting some of that energy out before they sit down at school, as well as teaching their children independence and allowing them to have some independence, both for the child's benefit, but also for the parents in some situations where it's complicated to fit the logistics all together, especially for single parent households. So a lot of reasons, but pretty universal agreement that most parents would like their child to be able to walk or bike. We did see that safety was a significant concern, particularly around driver behaviors. 96% agreed with the statement, I'm concerned about speeding or distracted drivers when my children walk or bike to school. And 58% said it's safe for children to walk or bike in my area. So we certainly see, a lot of concern on the safety side about driver behaviors. In the focus groups, we heard a lot of that too. That drivers aren't really paying attention. Also a lot of discussion about significant roadway crossings where they had to cross the highway and maybe the drivers don't really pay attention or maybe don't fully stop on a red before they make a turn, and just generally not being aware that there might be pedestrians crossing or bicyclists on the road. Having an adult present, many parents felt would make a difference. So we asked their comfort level with various environments for their children. They were much more comfortable having their child walk or bike to school with an adult than without. You can see 85% said that they're comfortable with their child walking to school with an adult, 74% biking with an adult. Without an adult, just about a quarter would be comfortable in that environment. And these are K through 8. So there's some of the parents of the younger children were a little less comfortable. Some of the parents with the older children were a little more comfortable, but largely we saw a huge split between if there's an adult present or not, in part because they felt the child, wasn't mature enough to make the right decisions, but also because a lot of the qualitative discussion focused on the fact that children don't have the experience necessary to know how to navigate the vehicle part of the environment, of the road crossings and getting there safely. Finally, we asked them about potential improvements. Sorry, this chart's a little complicated, but we gave them a list of potential improvements that could be made and asked them how would each of these change your comfort level with your child walking or biking to school. And in the survey, this is the sort of top part of the list. We see providing crossing guards, increasing safety and visibility, bike paths separated from the road. So, increasing the visibility of kids walking or biking, infrastructure improvements that would separate bikes and pedestrians from cars. In the focus group, we had some conversation about an overpass and sort of the idea that they could maybe bypass some of the more dangerous feeling intersections or parts of that trip. And this is kind of the second half of the list. And I do want to make the point, I'm going to go back to the first one. Everybody wants everything, as I'm sure you're all familiar with as elected officials, right? So 94% total said that top one would make them more comfortable with their child walking or biking. The second half of the list, they all want these two, just maybe a little less. So I think, as you all know, there's a lot of things that could be done that would help parents feel more comfortable. In the second slide, these are a little less compelling. Some of them are more specifically about biking, where the appeal was a little bit narrower versus walking, but also some of the education components didn't feel as obviously connected to the thing they were most concerned about, which is the interaction of cars and drivers with children walking or biking. There was also a lot of conversation more in the qualitative research about why the adult presence was important to people. And it sort of came down to having an adult on scene would help children navigate the challenging parts successfully, because the adult is thinking ahead and ready to anticipate the driver behaviors, as well as just increasing visibility that there are children. So I think that sort of came to, going back to this first slide, the crossing guards, the visibility. I think a lot of it, some of it was about a responsible adult, but some of it was really about that highlights the fact that there's groups that are potentially out there on the roadways. So finally, just to wrap up, in the qualitative research, at the end, we said, what did you learn? And uniformly, they really appreciated that this was being discussed. They said, wow, I didn't know anyone else was interested in this. I'm encouraged that this is important enough to talk about. I hope something comes out of it. I'm glad to know there are other people like me. So certainly something that they valued even starting the conversation, and were excited. This is a small group of people, obviously, but definitely a lot of interest and excitement as kids start going back to their physical school sites in the next school year, that this might be something that's on the agenda and that they might see some changes. So with that, I am happy to take any questions or send it back to Patrick.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah and Patrick, for your presentation. I believe Vice Mayor Alessio wants to kick it off with some questions.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Question with the survey, did you break this out regionally? Just because our cities and towns are very different from American Canyon to California?
Great question. So the survey was administered, essentially people were driven to the survey using support from the school districts to push the survey link out to their parent communities. We really were only successful with that with Napa Valley Unified, unfortunately. So I think we had very little or maybe no participation from any of the Up Valley communities. It was all focused on Napa and American Canyon area.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then one more question, and probably Patrick can address this or somebody else here. Do you track pedestrian cyclist accidents with vehicles? Is there perceived or actual danger, to pedestrians and cyclists?
I think that there's two answers to that question. The first is yes, that data is tracked. It's something that we monitor, although we don't actively track it ourselves. That is data that's collected based on police reports and other collisions that occur in our communities, and is collected at a statewide level, and we can pull those reports pretty easily. I think when it comes to the Safe Routes program and the difference between the reality on the ground, how many collisions are there actually occurring, and the perceptions by parents, as Sarah was speaking to, the perceptions are really what makes the decision for the parents. If they don't think that it's safe, even if the collision data may say otherwise, they're not going to be feeling comfortable, and they're not going to let their kids or encourage their kids to walk or bike. So perceptions in this case really do matter a great deal. I'll also just add to Sarah's comments on the prior question. Based on the demographics, at least, I think we got pretty good responses both from the city of Napa and American Canyon based on the demographic differences of those two communities. And so again, while this may not translate directly to the Up Valley communities, our expectation is that the perceptions are likely somewhat similar. And that's something we can certainly look further into in the next round of Safe Routes work that we'll do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Alessio. Mayor Ellsworth.
Thank you, and appreciated here looking at this. It's so critical Up Valley as well as our schools really sort of interweave with a lot of the most intense traffic areas here. And so a question I've got, we've been working, talking with St. Helena Hospital, who's brought in this Blue Zone program, looking at the Up Valley. Blue Zone's objective in terms of long, healthy lives, et cetera, and walking and biking being a part of that. Is there some dialogue between the Bike Coalition, NVTA, and Blue Zone, or some opportunity, just so we're all kind of working off the same page as we move, forward over the next year or two here? Just wanting to make sure that we're all communicating, and if we're designing things, it's maybe our combined forces that can help get the necessary funding and will. So I just wanted to just check in and see if there's that dialogue.
Yeah, so Director Ellsworth, this particular presentation, as you know, is the Safe Routes to School focus, but we have been coordinating with the Blue Zone folks, and in fact, David Morrison and Dr. Merluccio and I have met with them recently, actually last week. So there is a general focus to improve bike and pedestrian transportation as a separate effort. Part of that has also been undertaken by our countywide transportation or active transportation plan. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. Is a little bit long-winded, but
no, but that's great. I'm glad there's at least a dialogue between all. So thank you.
Councilmember Doring.
Yeah, just briefly, thank you for the presentation, Sarah. To your slide 7, I don't disagree with the point that you're making here. You have an agree or disagree. I am concerned about speeding or distracted drivers when my children walk or bike to school. I mean, for me as a parent, my kids are now older. The way that's phrased, it almost impels a response of, yes, I agree with that. So it's almost like built in, and I frankly, I'm surprised it's not 100%, because it's almost like, well, you're not a responsible parent if you wouldn't be concerned. Is that the way it was phrased, or can you drill down a little bit more about the basis of that? And can you see my point, I guess?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and thank you for that question. In the survey research, part of the intent of a question like that is essentially to make sure we're not just assuming something, right? We do want to make sure we're starting with hypotheses that test out quantitatively. But the other purpose for a question like that is to help us then lead into the qualitative research where we don't ask them, does it also come up? And so in the qualitative research, we didn't bring that up as a topic. We said, do your children walk or bike to school? And immediately they said, I'd love them to be able to do that, but I don't trust the drivers. So, I think to your point, and I would also say we showed a very small subset of the questions we asked in the survey. So yes, this one does get that strong agreement. We had lots of questions kind of all over, but this one, to me, it felt like, okay, let's see if we don't tee that up. Do we hear that in the qualitative? Is that the top of mind thing? And to me, in the qualitative research, it absolutely, we kept sort of steering them towards physical environments and what else, and their child's behavior and other things. And they'd say, right, but the drivers. So, I think I don't disagree with you, and we don't want to overstate, this conclusion, but I'd say if you're thinking as as somebody in your job, talking to parents about getting to school, they're not going to this is going to be the first thing they think about. They're not going to think about better bike lanes first. They're going to think about this first, and then the things that they think would help their child not be put into that environment that they are very uncomfortable or nervous about.
Thank you for that response. By the way, I do appreciate your using formally and in your presentation the word children and child throughout. I think sometimes the word kids is subconsciously pejorative, and folks use that term. And so I do personally like the word child and children. I think that affirms children. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, I see no other hands up. Laura, if we can please go to the gallery view and then ask if there's any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item.
I do not see any public comment.
All right, I'll bring it back. Sarah, thank you for doing this. I think it was very critical information, especially in terms of what we're talking about in the region. When we talk about Plan Bay Area 2050, you see significant investments in mode shift, bike and peding specifically. And those of us that are parents or will be parents or have been parents understand the safety of our children. But a lot of it, I'm not sure who said it, I think it was Patrick, it's about the perception and how as parents or grandparents or adults, we make decisions in this moment about perceptions. So I thought that was very key and intuitive. The question I have for Patrick is, this is great data. Can we point to communities where they've actually implemented or have these outcomes where you see a significant of the children being able to ride their bikes to school and achieve these outcomes that we're all talking about?
Thank you, Chair. That's a really good question. Yeah, there certainly are communities, not just in the Bay Area, but across California and across the country that have much more significant mode share numbers for kids walking and biking than we do in Napa County. It is going to be a very locally specific discussion when we talk about what is going to get us those mode shift numbers. This data is going to be a vital component of that future conversation. And I think that just to wrap things up for today, moving forward, the work that we've done looking at the safety barriers in the built environment at each of the public school sites and within a quarter to a half mile around them, as well as this parent perception research, and then following up and having those conversations with each city council, the school district directly, will help us kind of shape a program that can address those concerns, both on the perception side and on the actual, what is the collision data telling us side of things, so that we can get to those numbers. And certainly looking at the success stories from other Bay Area jurisdictions and across California is going to be a key component as well. I think the biggest piece right now is making sure we can continue this program moving forward, and figuring out a way that we can establish a permanent program so that we can see those numbers long term, because it's not going to be an overnight or even a couple of year process. It's going to take many, many years.
All right, Patrick, I appreciate those closing comments. Again, I think this is critical in terms of how we plan and what our future is for our county, our cities, and our town. So again, I appreciate your advocacy on this. Again, this was an informational item. So thank you very much to you. And Sarah, thank you for always being so great at presenting data. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to our consent item. We have one item of consent found on page 8 to 11. Is there any questions, discussion on consent? Seeing none, do we have any public comment, Laura, on our consent items?
We do not.
All right, seeing no discussion from the board, I will entertain a motion to approve our consent item.
So moved, Canning.
All right, we have first by Canning.
Second, Joseph.
All right, first by Canning, second by Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Liz Alessio, Beth
Sorry,
Painter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Painter.
I will abstain, having not been at that meeting.
Thank you. Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Let's move on to our regular items. 11.1 found on page 12 to 16. This resolution 21-17, exception to the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, 180-day wait period. Laura, I believe you're taking this item.
I am. Thank you, Chair. So as Chair Pedroza just mentioned, the item before you is seeking the board's approval for resolution 2117, which may look familiar to a resolution we passed last month. It is to make an exception for the 180-day CalPERS wait period to bring on a retired annuitant to the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. This resolution is to fill a critical need of the position that I hold, board secretary and office manager, for a limited duration for extra help. I will be going on a possible limited work schedule due to medically related restrictions, and we have identified a retired annuitant with the very specific skills to fulfill the duties that I hold. And so because it has not been 180 days since this retired annuitant has been retired, we need to approve a resolution to stay within the CalPERS retirement guidelines. And this is also just a proactive way to ensure that there's no lapse in any public service, that our agency here at NVTA continues to have the support it needs for human resources and board secretary duties. And the extra help position would be terminated as soon as the work has been completed. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura, for the report out. Do we have any questions for the board members at this time? Seeing none, do we have anyone in the public that wishes to address the board on this item?
I do not.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for any additional discussion. If there is not, I will entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve. Alessio?
All right, we have first by Alessio, second by Ellsworth, I believe. All those, roll call vote, please.
Mark Joseph?
Yes, and I'd like to note that Councilmember Abadamas is here being Leon's replacement today.
Oh, thank you. I was not aware of that. I will add her to this vote.
Thanks.
Thank you, council member.
And my vote was yes.
Thank you. One moment. Chris Canning,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Beth Painter,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
and Miriam Abdominos. We can't hear you, Miriam. Okay.
All right, so
All right, I said
Motion
yes.
does. Thank you. The motion does pass.
thank you, Laura, and we hope to see you soon and best wishes.
Thank
All
you.
right, we're going to move on to our next item, 11.2. This is the design and install 4 electric vehicle charging stations, including 2 in the town of Yountville and 2 in the city of St. Helena. This is found on page 17 to 28. Sanjay, take it away.
Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. The item presented to you under 11.2 is an action item requesting approval for one of the options presented in the staff report for design and installation of 4 electric vehicle charging stations, 2 at Yountville and 2 in St. Helena. Just a little background on this. FTA awarded NVTA funding in 2017 to purchase 5 BYD 30-feet zero emission electric buses and corresponding chargers. The buses are scheduled to arrive in the fall of this year, and it is necessary to have that charging infrastructure in St. Helena and Yountville so that these buses can go into service. We are also thinking of installing a 5th charger either at the future Vine maintenance facility at a later time, or maybe in the Jackson Street, depending on the need. A RFP was released on May 17th, 2021. Excuse me. It was published on NVTA website, sent to the local electrical contractors, and was advertised on public purchase and other regional platforms. RFP was due on June 4th. 4 proposals were received. The proposals were evaluated based on 3 criteria: project understanding, experience and qualification, and cost. The firm with the highest point totals from NVTA evaluation team was Bayer Electrical Solutions, Inc. They are based out of San Jose. The cost of design and installation was $185,000, plus we are requesting a $50,000 contingency, which is about 27% of the bid. Funds for this project will be covered mostly by FTA Lono Vehicle Deployment Program grant, which is roughly about $144K. The local match is a combination of LCTOP, that is Low Carbon Transit Operations Program funds from state's Cap and Trade Program, and TDA, Local Transportation Fund account funds. The reason for the high contingency is that this is a design and build project, and many factors at the facilities are unknown at this time. And there is a very high chance that the PG&E service to the existing locations, Yountville and St. Helena, may not be sufficient for both the chargers to function at the same time and may need to be upgraded. However, that portion of PG&E upgrade is not part of this effort. So staff is requesting NVTA board to authorize the executive director to make minor modifications and approve an agreement 2115 with Bear Electrical Solutions in an amount not to exceed $235,000 to complete the design and installation of these EV chargers at St. Helena and Yountville locations. The other alternatives, the NVTA board could choose to defer the design and installation of charging stations until a later date and risk the vehicles arriving without a place to charge those vehicles. Alternative 2 is to forego the installing chargers in both the proposed locations and wait for the Vine Transit maintenance facility to be finished and install all the chargers at that location. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Sanjay. As someone that drives an electric car and has run out of battery, I can personally attest to you need chargers. You need to invest in infrastructure to have these outcomes of electric vehicles. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our directors to see if we have any questions. Director Dorman and then Director Joseph.
Thank you, Sanjay, for the report, and thank you, Chair. Sanjay, I know you had the 3 criteria. Where did Bear fall in the pricing? Were they also the low bidder money-wise?
Yes, that is right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Director Joseph?
Yes, I'm curious to see, since they're being located in Yountville and St. Helena, is there an opportunity for American Canyon and Calistoga to be a lucky recipient? Or stated differently, why are they, I mean, is it being spread out because the Vine Transit Station doesn't exist yet, so it's not very practical to put them there? Or how is the rationale for distribution?
Director Joseph, I'll go ahead and answer that question. So for Calistoga, some of the operating area up there can't accommodate the larger bus, and the small and electric vehicles and smaller size buses aren't yet available on the market. So that's why we prioritize St. Helena and Yountville, because they had the operating area that accommodated them, and so that's the answers to the one question. The other issue that we had is we needed a protected place to park the electric vehicles, and there isn't one available in American Canyon. That's not to say that we won't have electric vehicles operating down there, but in terms of actually parking longer term to charge the vehicles, that wasn't possible.
Just to add to that, we will also be looking out if there is a possibility that one of these locations does not have adequate service. We may be reaching out to other places to actually seek if there is a facility and service, PG&E service available to feed this charger, and American Canyon could be lucky.
All right, thank you, Sanjay. See no further questions from our board, or do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Again, we'll bring it back to the board. And I know we've talked about this at the Climate Change Committee that some of us serve on, of the importance of investing in infrastructure to create these outcomes that we want to see that are so critical for our future. So seeing no further discussion, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Joseph, I'll make the motion.
All right, we have first by Councilmember Joseph.
Dorman, second.
Second by Councilmember Dorman. All roll call vote, please.
Marian Abudamus. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Chris Canning.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Beth Painter.
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza.
Yes.
Belia Ramos.
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
and Carrie Dorman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much and welcome, Councilmember Adubamos. I'm having a hard time, Miriam. I apologize.
Alfredo,
All right.
we went to high school together. You should know better.
I know. All right, let's move on to item 11.3, Vine Transit update. Rebecca, found on page 29 to 33. Take it away, please.
All right, thank you, Chair Pedroza, members of the board. And Laura, can you just confirm that you're seeing the full screen and not the presenter's mode?
Yes, I can see the full screen. Thank you.
Perfect. Sometimes with the ones and the twos. Okay, so all aboard, that is kind of going to be the overall Bay Area marketing scheme and things that will be done region-wide as we try to move people back to transit. And I'm here to present on item 11.3 today, which talks about the preliminary results of the May 9th, 2021 service changes. Just as a reminder and to give it a little bit of a Bay Area context, similar to what Chairman Pedroza mentioned earlier, we're part of the larger Bay Area, and through the Blue Ribbon Task Force and through MTC, they've been really good at gathering data about how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting all of the agencies. So as you will see here shown in orange, I have the Bay Area data collected by MTC for all of the transit operators. It's kind of year-over-year change, as well as the Vine year-over-year change shown in blue. So basically, this is showing between 18-19 and then fiscal year 19-20. So there was just about a 22% drop, say, in Napa's service and about a 24% drop overall in the Bay Area. So we fared slightly better. And then if you're looking at fiscal year 2020/2021, kind of same story. And that Napa was about a 61% decrease overall. The Bay Area saw a little bit closer to a 68% decrease, but we're basically, following trend. And then predictions moving into the future fiscal years, and obviously these are estimates. We did not predict as quick of a recovery as some of the other Bay Area transit agencies, but we'll just see how that plays out in reality over time. And so overall, the MTC and its marketing plan all aboard is looking to kind of meet these levels that we're predicting or potentially even exceed them on the ridership front. And so as a recap, we made a series of changes on May 9th here in Napa. And at that point, we instituted the north route going from the Redwood Park and Ride down to the Saukville Gateway Transit Center in the city of Napa, as well as the south route in the city of Napa. And these were our two fixed routes within the city. And then we offered on demand within the city of Napa limits. And then we also made the change in May to return to a weekday schedule on the routes 10 and 11, the route 10 going all the way out Valley to Calistoga, and the route 11 going south through American Canyon to the Vallejo Ferry Terminal. And we extended the hours on Friday and Saturday night in Yountville and Calistoga. So what kind of happened as a result of that? And the numbers that I'm showing here today, right, go through the end of May, and maybe I'll throw in a little bit about what we've seen in June thus far. But specifically in the city of Napa, since we saw the biggest changes there, we saw about a 17% increase when you compare April to May. So we did see an increase overall in the ridership there, we were excited about. And going on into June, we would expect an overall increase as well, using the city of Napa numbers plus the rest of our system. Kind of one of the downsides to changing right in a way to the fixed route and doing it with the on-demand is we did see an increase in the wait times and on-demand in those last 3 weeks of May of about 4 minutes and 35 seconds. We made some changes to the blocking, which is kind of the allocation of the buses and drivers, not changing the number of drivers that we're doing on demand, but changing how they were doing it, i.e. they weren't changing from fixed route back to on demand, but we're just doing exclusively on demand. So we were able to get that down another minute in the first few weeks of June. that we've seen so far. So we think we're on a good path right now. And also as a reminder, how we made the decision, right, to do the routes N&S was an analysis we did of a few alternatives for fixed routes. And so when we did the analysis with our on-demand partner, right, we were doing about 148 rides per day. And this was in the January, February timeframe. And then they projected what would happen in a mid-growth scenario of 380 rides per day on-demand and a future growth scenario. And I have to say, their modeling was pretty good in that we've moved from this baseline scenario to a mid-growth scenario. And it's almost exactly, if you looked at yesterday, we did 220 on-demand rides and just around 150 fixed route rides. So that means we need to start planning for this future scenario, right? Because of the trajectory that we're currently on. And also to give kind of credence to their modeling, we're doing alternative 2, as I mentioned, and we're operating 6 vehicles, and they had estimated about a 16-minute average wait time. And that's just about where we are right now in the 16-minute time frame. So they also, right, tell us though, okay, in a future growth scenario, if you would continue to have 6 vehicles, that would definitively not work. You would need either 8 to 10 vehicles in on-demand, or you would need to look at putting some additional fixed route service in. So today I'm going to present some scenarios that would have some additional fixed route service in play. And that kind of plays off of Patrick's presentation today from the Bicycle Coalition as it relates to schools, because our biggest wait times and when they spike the most and what contributes to this 16 minutes oftentimes is school trips. And so these are some proposed options and that I'd like to get some feedback on for August 15th of 2021 when school would return in person. So we would keep basically the north and south route, and we would extend those hours earlier in the morning so that they could be used to get to school drop-off times. And we extend them slightly later in the evening. And then our Saturday hours would stay the same. And then we potentially have new fixed routes on the east side and west side of Napa that would complement the north and south routes. And then in terms of on demand, we would extend those hours slightly. We're currently doing 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. On the Monday through Friday, and we would keep our Saturday hours. We would be looking at doing 4 vehicles blocked only for on demand. We'd be still determining the exact service area for on demand in that we might have to kind of restrict people going from the furthest north to the furthest south. We're going to see how that plays out in some of our modeling. But at the very least, riders would not be able to use on demand if they are along a fixed route. So we need to make sure that our fixed routes are successful. So here are 2 east route options just to orient you. This is the Saskell Gateway Transit Center and the fairgrounds. And this east route option is very similar to what we ran almost exactly in 2019. Really, the only potential difference would be a service specifically to Silverado Middle School twice in the AM and twice in the PM. And we're kind of working with them to see if it would be feasible to use their turnaround to do that. And this would mimic what we currently do at Camille Creek Community School twice a day, where we divert from the route to serve that school twice a day. And that's been highly successful there. And that's why we're potentially interested in doing it at Silverado. So that's kind of east route option 1. And then east route option 2, mimicking what we had done basically with the previous route D in 2020, where more of an abbreviated route, not serving Silverado Middle School, but continuing to serve Camille Creek School and serving the South Napa Marketplace. So those are our 2 potential east route options. And then switching over to the west side of town, again, to orient you, starting at the Saskell Gateway Transit Center and traveling over to the Westwood neighborhood and serving Harvest Middle School, which will be open for this coming fiscal year. And I know it says west option 2. We did have 4 options at one point. Option 1 got thrown out due to it. Some unprotected left turns that really aren't safe moves for us to make. So this west route option 2 is similar to the route B that we ran in the beginning of 2020, pre-pandemic. And it's an attempt to do in the Westwood neighborhood, essentially an out and back, right? There's always geography, right, is a little tricky. It's not a perfect grid, as we all know. SR 29 runs down the center, and there's really only two places to cross it in the picture that you can see here, right, over First Street and over on Sonoma. And you obviously don't have access to 29 from Old Sonoma. Our third west option is similar to what we ran in 2019, almost exactly on the Route B. So it's more of a loop option. And you kind of see the difference there. And then finally, a west option 4, which is just a variation on the loop that we saw in option 3, and again serves Harvest Middle School. So after kind of conclude the presentation, be looking for any feedback that you have, and specifically we'll be reaching out to the Westwood neighborhood with these 3 options to get their feedback after today. And so the other big thing that we wanted to talk about and we see on the horizon is Bottle Rock service for 2021. As I'm sure many of you know, Bottle Rock will be on Labor Day weekend this year. And in prior years, we've offered free transit over Bottle Rock weekend and would continue to do that. So on the regional, on kind of the bottom part of the slide, this would be the service that we've offered for Bottle Rocks for a number of years now. We're confident and been successful in that service. So we'd kind of continue moving forward with that. And on the local service front, it's going to look different in that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and prior Bottle Rocks, right, we had 8 fixed routes. And now, assuming that we're going to move forward with an east and a west route starting August the 15th, we would have 4 fixed routes in the city of Napa that we would operate later into the evening hours on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we would also operate those fixed routes on Sunday. So that would kind of be the basics of that there. And we did execute an agreement with Bottle Rock in order to help with the funding of that. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rebecca, for that presentation. At this point, I'll see if there's any questions from directors. Seeing none initially, let's go to public comment and then we'll come back. So, Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do not.
All right. Well, this was an informational item. I know, Rebecca, you're looking for feedback, so I'll see if there's any commissioner feedback at this point, or commissioner director feedback. All right, Rebecca, I think you impressed us all with those diagrams. Again, I appreciate this. When will we get another update once this is implemented?
Sure. So we'll update you basically at the September board meeting. We'll probably just maybe in the executive director's report at July, give you maybe an update on what we've selected in terms of an east and a west route. But in terms of a formal update, we would do it at the September board meeting, and we would show you basically the first 15 days of August and how that went.
Wonderful. I appreciate it. So again, this was an informational item, so director comments. Thank you very much, Rebecca. We're going to move on to our next item, 11.4. This is a federal and state legislative update. Director Miller, this is on page 33 to 47. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair Pedrosa. Just real quickly, there's no bills. I mean, this passed the deadline for introducing legislation. On the federal side, we have a draft surface transportation reauthorization legislation bill from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the Investing in a New Vision for the Environment and Surface Transportation in America, otherwise known as INVEST. The bill would provide $547 billion in fiscal year 2022 through 26 for highway, transit, rail, and surface transportation safety investments. That's about a 79% increase over funding levels from the Fixing America Surface Transportation, or FAST Act, which is the current surface transportation authorization. Roughly 90% is directed to the core FAST Act highway and transit formula programs and regional significant projects. The bill includes multimodal discretionary grants, projects of national and regional significance is what they're being called. Those are otherwise known by the rest of us as earmarks. And included in that is a $3 million line item for the pre-construction of the Yountville to St. Helena Vine Trail project that will be administered by the County of Napa. So congratulations to the county on that. On the state side, Monday, the legislature approved a $264 billion state budget blueprint, which is effectively a placeholder pending additional discussions. Nevertheless, the blueprint meets the June 15th cutoff date to pass a budget in order for legislators to be paid. The blueprint includes many of the governor's proposed line items, and while lawmakers have only met the June 15th deadline 6 out of the 10 years since the passage of Prop 25, which initially imposed the June 15th no pay deadline, this year's blueprint budget has posed the most substantial test to the proposition since its passage. There are a number of trailer bills being worked on, and staff will provide you with a more detailed summary at your July meeting. And that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Miller. Any questions for Kate at this point? Seeing none, this is just an update, so there's no action item required, I believe, at this time. So do we have any public comment, Laura, on this item?
We do not.
All right, seeing no further questions from the directors, let's move on to future agenda items. Do we have any submissions, requests? Seeing none, all right, I believe we do have a need for closed session.
Yes, Chair, this is Deanne Gillick, and the board will be meeting in closed session on the items listed on the agenda relating to a claim received from Mr. Pimentel.
Okay. All right, so we've announced the closed session item. Deanne, are we staying on this Zoom, or is there another link that's going to be sent to the directors?
Yes, staff will, you stay on this call, staff will move us to a breakout room.
All right, no one do anything, you're going to be moved. All right, thank you, Deanne. At this point, we're going to recess into closed session to the public. Thank you all.
Laura, I paused the recording.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Laura, can we go to the gallery view just so I can make sure we have the quorum? Or that who's here? Thank you. All right, we don't need a quorum for this. So as soon as I see Deanne, we'll.
I'm here,
report out.
Chair.
All right, perfect. All right. We are back from a closed session. Council, did we have a reportable action?
Yeah, the board met in closed session on the item listed on the agenda regarding a claim submitted to NVTA on May 11th from Pimentel. The board took action by unanimous vote to formally reject that claim and authorized staff to send the appropriate rejection letter.
All right. Thank you very much for the report out. Seeing no further business before the authority, we're going to adjourn to our next regular meeting, which is July 21st, 2021. With that, we adjourn. Thank you, everyone.